This podcast episode is on healing childhood sexual abuse and content advisory. We don't get into anything graphic, but it's a very provocative topic. It can bring up a lot. Just make sure you take pauses if you need it, drink water, take breaks, listen to it in intervals if you need, and thank you for being here.
Parenting's hard, you don't know what to do. You're blaming your kids, but it's probably you. You love your kids and that you can trust. Just remember your kids don't suck.
Welcome to Your Kids Don't Suck, cultivating closeness with your children through non-coercive conscious parenting. We're your hosts, Cara Tedstone and Rythea Lee. Let's dive in and grow together.
Welcome back to Your Kids Don't Suck, where we talk about non-coercive collaborative parenting. This is Rythea. I'm going to say some stuff because we are departing on our usual focus, and we are inviting parents who are survivors of childhood sexual abuse to tune in, but also any survivors anywhere who are listening, because unfortunately it is so prevalent. It's an epidemic and it's never talked about enough, no matter who's talking about it. And we have a wonderful guest today to help me talk about this and help Cara talk about this. And her name is Abigail Gunn. Abigail Gunn is a licensed therapist and the founder of People Make Sense, a platform challenging how we talk about childhood trauma and dissociation. After recovering from her own memories of sexual abuse, she set out to name what most systems avoid, that trauma is not a disorder, it's a normal response to harm. With over 24,000 followers on TikTok, Abigail helps survivors believe their own experience and see their symptoms in context. Her work pushes beyond individual healing towards systemic change. We can stop diagnosing people and start diagnosing harm and build a world where safety is the norm, not the exception.
Sounds good.
That. Yeah.
It does sound
pretty
good.
good, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, sounds impressive.
So I want to say why I'm so excited that you're here, Abby. For people who follow me and follow me on social media or follow this podcast, I often refer to my childhood and my history of incest and all kinds of other abuse, and I'm very out about it and have been for a long time. And in my life and in my world, I unfortunately or fortunately am usually the smartest person in the room about this topic. I mean, I could talk about it for hours nonstop, and I work with survivors of sexual abuse, childhood sexual abuse for 30 years. And I work a lot with people with repressed memories. And I really want to talk about repressed memories with you, Abby, because I rarely can find people that know as much as I do. I do have 3 best friends who have all recovered memories and are currently recovering memories. And thank God for that, or I would feel like I'm crazy most of the time. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And thank you for being, so open and willing to talk about this because again, I think, childhood sexual abuse is sort of the unnamed endemic. The statistics are pretty robust. Anywhere from 1 in 3 girls, this is non-inclusive language, but I'll use it, but it's not inclusive. 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 6 boys. You average that out to 1 in 4 human beings have experienced some form of childhood sexual abuse. That was the same data as COVID, and we had a world shutdown for that. So I do believe that talking about this is how we learn to, or how we are able to stop it. And that exists for both, right, on both sides of the spectrums, both for survivors, for perpetrators. I don't love it as a concept of a spectrum because a lot of times it's intergenerational harm when it is harm, but we can, people can't get help anywhere if we don't identify what's going on. So
Breaking silence is very satisfying. I never tire of it.
Oh, it's tremendous.
Yeah.
It's tremendous. It's literally coming alive, I think, especially when we're looking at something like dissociation, which is part of the freeze response, as animals to come out of fawn, right? Which is, aligning, which is often looks like silence, is coming into your own humanity. I know this is a parenting podcast. Children don't learn by what we tell them. They learn by what we model. And so modeling your own humanity, that's a big deal.
Hmm.
to your kid.
Do you
So
want to tell us?
who am I? Yeah.
Yeah, do you want to tell us your story?
Sure. I won't share all of it. One of the things I typically don't talk too much about is sort of like the logistics of harm. But basically, my story is actually relatively normal as it relates to people who recover their memories of being sexually abused in childhood. So I grew up with my family of origin. Uh, my mother was diagnosed with cancer when I was 12. She died when I was 21. I went to college, became a therapist, therapized people, and then got um, got into a relationship, got pregnant, and can I swear on this podcast?
Oh,
Yes.
please.
Okay, shit started to fall apart a bit. So pregnancy really kind of brought me into my body for the first time. I think I was pretty dissociated for a very long period of time. And, at the time, I really had no idea what was going on. But now, with the research I have done, I understand that that was perfectly normal. I had one kid. That didn't kick me out of dissociation as much as you might think. So I then suddenly was pregnant with another kid. So my joke is that I was pregnant for 2 years, had two kids in the span of 2 years, and that just blew up any ability for me to maintain sort of these internal structures of dissociation.
Hmm.
And that's actually really normal. There's moments when we see people recover their memory. Becoming a parent is a big one. Any space where you kind of have your new power or change. So when I was 38 years old, I recovered memories of being sexually abused as a child. And that wasn't a one off. Often when people recover their memories, they start to recover what is safest to remember first. So, for my experience, again, I was a therapist, I had been in therapy. I did not recover my experience through any kind of therapeutic intervention. It was actually going to Al-Anon and being in the rooms at Al-Anon, which is where I started to go, I think I might be a human being.
Hmm.
This is a terrifying period for anyone who's gone through it. And I've always found information incredibly comforting. So I set about trying to, understand what was happening to me. Could this be real? Could I have made it up? How does this work? Am I crazy? Is this psychosis? What is happening?
Hmm.
Um, and what I found was that this is actually a very common experience to recover memories of childhood sexual abuse. If you've been sexually abused in childhood, approximately around 30% of people have some degree of forgetting and remembering. And that was both comforting and horrifying. And I realized that, my own suffering was not it was not going to help me to focus on it. I was responsible for two tiny people. I needed to be present. I have a practice. I had to figure out how to make what was happening meaningful so that I could keep kind of moving forward. And that's in part why I decided to start the platform. I saw that there was nobody talking about childhood sexual abuse as a therapist. And there's lots of reasons for that. Right? There's lots of reasons, but I felt that because I am a survivor, I could speak about this as both a therapist and a survivor in a more protected way than somebody who might just be out there as a therapist or a survivor. As I've continued to understand my own experience, the reality is that I grew up in what I call organized abuse. So, that means that the sexual abuse of children, and again, this is sort of my understanding of how this works, but was a business. And that's typical, things like in the sense of that, you know, childhood sexual abuse material or CSAM is a multi-billion dollar business. It's not a legal business, but it is a business. And organized abuse just means multiple perpetrators. It was organized work. And interestingly enough, through this, I've gotten to connect with other survivors who were part of parties as a child that I was at as well. We had shared experience, identified same perpetrators, and other folks in my extended family have also recovered their own experience. So a lot of times there are these sort of intergenerational, familial, it's a family. It can be a family business.
Actually, I've been a therapist for 30 years. That is not that is not what I have found. I work with the one conscious person in the family. I have found that most survivors don't ever find someone else to validate their memories ever, like ever, hardly.
Yes,
Hardly
yes.
ever, ever, ever.
No, the validation is very remarkable. That's not normal. The normal, yes, that is very rare. It comes from speaking, though, like you said, like speaking out offers others protection and validation so that they can, if they have, right, any of that experience, they can believe themselves.
I guess I just wanted to say for like people listening though that most of the time you never get validation and you have to find your way to believe yourself, and that is the hardest part of this journey. It makes me want to cry. I luckily had somebody disclose to me about my father, and that's the only reason I remembered. I actually wasn't remembering it. And then as soon as she told me, I started having flashbacks right away. And I'm really, really lucky, but I have very close friends who don't ever get that, never had that. My clients never get that. I do have a couple of clients whose sisters have remembered. But it's just very, very rare. So I just don't want anyone to feel bad if you never get that. That's what happens, unfortunately.
Not everybody needs to make a TikTok platform and talk about it, and folks can come find you. And you know what I mean? Like, I think again,
Yeah.
that's not, if this happened, one of the things I say a lot is if this happened to you, it did. The past is not something we actually have power over. Typically there is, people will get really caught up in like looking for evidence or what is validation or what is real. And the truth is, like, you are the evidence, your body, your reactions, which again, when we talk about recovered memory, your responses to things, they don't come from, nowhere.
Right.
Right, because there's some misconception about this whole topic that it's common for people to like make stuff up or have false memories.
Yeah.
And how does a therapist prove or are we just supposed to believe every client? And it's like, yes.
This is because of the false memory organization that
Yeah.
Good PR.
they took over the internet and they had a lot of money and they I mean even it's still there. It's still
Right,
really
and it's
hard
so
to.
pervasive.
Yeah.
But it really, so this is one of the things I always like to share with survivors. So the False Memory Foundation was created by the parents of Dr. Jennifer Freyd.
Would you expand a little bit on this, like for people who don't know
Yeah.
what this is?
So I think part of this is like to click, who is Dr. Jennifer Freyd? This is important. She is currently, I believe, at Stanford. She was most recently, I think 2 years ago, the American Psychological Association's Person of the Year. She's basically written all about DARVO, institutional betrayal, and betrayal trauma. So and again, I don't want to speak for her, but this is my understanding of the story. She recovered her memories of being sexually abused. She brought that to her family of origin and told them. In response, they darboed her. They created the False Memory Foundation. And this is what, people do to hide the reality of their abuse. And the thing about the False Memory Foundation, I think it was 80s, 90s, like they had an incredible PR team. They had money up the wazoo. Again, I think child exploitation is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So there are people who are deeply invested, not just on an individual level, but on a systemic level of trying to create scenarios to support disbelieving survivors. Because, victims require people to take a stand. Perpetrators just require people to do nothing. So the False Memory Foundation was, a group of folks probably made a lot of money, or paid, each other to put out a lot of propaganda about the idea that memory can be made up. And Elizabeth Loftus was on the board of this. She's often trotted out as a memory expert. She's out of the University of California, Irvine, which is my alma mater. But she has proved you can create false memories for people sort of through coercion, of getting lost in a mall or very normative childhood experiences. You can't, though, another study kind of disproved this idea that childhood sexual abuse is something you can, create false memories of, when they tried to do it using a false memory of a painful enema, a non-normative childhood experience. And that was, they were not able to do that. So part of this is like, is memory, malleable? Well, sure. But the kind of childhood sexual abuse is a terribly profound experience for a child. It changes the way you understand the world, relationships, your own body, your autonomy, right? This is not, did I get lost in a mall?
Right. Right.
It's not. Like any good business, I'm sure there's a PR team supporting denying the reality of survivors in this way. It doesn't behoove, any businesses, to believe the report of survivors.
Right. And Cara, I don't know if you know this, but the whole False Memory Foundation said that it was therapists that were implanting their clients with
It's
memory.
interesting because as like a psychology student way back whenever in university, not even studying psychology holistically at this point yet, but just taking a couple courses, we learn about this, but it's taught from the lens that this can absolutely happen.
Yep.
It's very much a fact. And so the concern is that there are probably, I would say, there's a mainstream sort of underlying belief that this happens all the time, that we have to
Yes.
question what we're hearing as therapists, which is terrifying.
You know, what happens a lot when I'm working with survivors is that, well, I'll just talk about myself. That's easier. So, how I repressed my memories was that while the horrible things were happening, there were all kinds of things that were being told to me, either actually in words or in how people are treating me, that and things I had to tell myself to repress it. Like, this isn't happening. This really isn't my parent. It's just a robber who came in the house, or I just want attention, or I'm just, I don't know, all kinds of things. Mostly, though, that this isn't happening and I'm making this up. That's the main thing, and all hundreds of versions of that. So every single time I have a new memory come up, I will also have the recording. I made this up. I just want attention. This is crazy. I'm crazy. Everybody would hate me if I told anyone. All of that comes up. Even though I've been recovering memories for 30 years, I still have the same recordings that play every single time I'm having a new memory. And that's just how it goes because it's bonded with the memory itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Totally. It's conditioning.
Right.
It's behavioral conditioning. And I think part of my deep dive into kind of understanding my own experience and that this was happening was I looked into false allegations because I was like, if this is right, this is then, if I'm making it up, what does it look like when people make it up? What is it? And one of the things that was really interesting to see was because I do believe, in a therapeutic relationship, there's a power dynamic and people can be coerced, right? But again, that's entirely separate than people recovering their memory. That is categorically a separate thing. The thing that really struck me, and this has sort of been a big part of what has helped me understand and stay with my own experience, is that I, as a human being, am not conceptual, and reality is not conceptual. Like the idea that if a tree fell in a forest, did it happen? If no one saw it, yes, it did. Like it did. We don't have to see it for it to be true. And one of the things that I noted in all of the research I did around incidences where people thought this happened to them and then it didn't, was that the perpetrators, right, or the alleged perpetrator, never responded with DARVO. They never responded with, I don't believe you, no one will believe you, cutting people up, no attacks, right? That like if this came out, what people who did not do anything, and again, there's like not like 4 cases I read where this happened. So really people recovering their memories is a normative thing, right? But the idea that like if it didn't happen, what somebody who cares about you and loves you and is attached to you responds with is profound concern,
Right.
right? Not deny, attack, and
Mm,
reverse victim and
mm,
offender. And that's
Right.
part of what I want survivors to understand is
mhm,
like when you're trying to believe your own experience, you don't just have to believe you. You can believe the actions of others as well. And they make sense. All human behavior is functional.
mm,
So, what is the function of denying, attacking, and reversing victim and offender if you didn't do anything?
mm,
There isn't one.
Right.
That's such a good,
That's really
important
good
point.
point. Yeah.
Really important. Really validating.
Do you think you could go back to the word dissociation? You said I was dissociated for most of my life for a very long time, and then I was forced into my body, or I came into my body. What does dissociation mean to you? How would you define it?
Sure. So I think, it's psychobabble language for a animal experience, like an animal adaptation, which is there's a video on my page. I love to give this video to everybody, where it's an antelope with a jaguar kind of dragging it around. And the antelope, appears dead. It's not moving, it doesn't look like breathing. And then the jaguar goes away. And on the video, you watch the antelope start taking deep breaths, coming back into its body, and then it has this shake off, which really looks like a panic attack, and then it leaps off and has a nice day, right? So dissociation is this kind of psychobabble term for this last ditch animal survival mechanism, which is freeze. And the reason we freeze is because predators don't like things that do not move. The fight is part of what, says, oh, that thing's alive. That thing's right. That thing's there. They experience disgust. They'll move away. They're not so interested in dead things. So human
Mm,
beings do this too. And one of the things that folks would be like, oh, you're in functional freeze, you're in this, that, yep. However, if you were born with your head in the mouth of a jaguar, you are not consciously, you have no privilege or ability to be aware that you are not, connected to your stuff, right? Because in
mhm,
that freeze state, it's not that the animal isn't terrified. It just can't act on it. It can't feel through it. If it felt all that terror, it would move and that would put it in danger. So what I realized, and again, I don't like the DSM. I don't like that. I think the mental health system, in many ways, the DSM came to fruition right around, the beginning of the women's movement. One of my favorite quotes is "Courage in women is often mistaken as insanity." It's sort of this way of being like, you know, what's what you're reporting isn't real.
mm,
Um,
mhm,
Instead of maybe this makes sense somehow. Maybe this is so basically when I was kind of looking at, dissociation and depersonalization, these, right, I really started looking at myself as an animal and a human being, that I wasn't actually able to control or think through, myself in the way that I thought I could. I'm not a concept, that like my emotions don't come from nowhere. They come from my relation, from the interplay between me and the world. I'm not just sad, I'm sad because something in reality has activated that sensory system. And I think of
Mhm.
emotions as being sensory.
Mhm. And also relational, which is something that the DSM sort of does not differentiate. It's like, you can just be depressed, and so we'll just give you an SSRI, but it's like looking for the meaning and the relational impact of our experiences when we interface with people, with environments, with systems. You're nailing it. It's not.
And with history, with our own history.
Exactly. I mean, if we're animals, then we're all, I always, you might see my dog in the background, Lois. I always like to, but like, she's, I don't know her full history, but she's terrified of, hardwood floors. She was terrified of hardwood floors and she was terrified of stairs. And when I first met her and saw this, I didn't go, oh, she's depressed. Or I didn't say, oh, there's something neurologically, right? I assumed this came from experience.
Mm.
And I assumed it because she's an animal. And we understand that all of the things she is learning in her life, right, is meant to help her live and survive things and figure out what's a threat or not. And for whatever reason, we've decided this does not apply to human beings,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? That's what the DSM decides.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that makes no sense to me.
So dissociation is a form of freeze, living in freeze. And
Yeah,
freeze as a nervous system experience, like as a nervous system experience.
that's my understanding.
But so do you think of it as out, like when people say out of my body? Like in some way you're not inside your own body on some level?
Yeah. And there's a really some interesting literature around things like the language is a little, but internalized perpetration. Or, there's I think it's Sandor Ferenczi, A Confusion of Tongues, where he talks about childhood sexual abuse as an analyst around, and he talks about it as sort of like understanding that children to adapt will kind of go into the experience of the perpetrator. And that's essentially, there's a lot of conversation about decentering men, decentering this, decentering the patriarchy. The idea is that that experience for a child just makes you center, you know, the jaguar instead of yourself as the antelope.
Mm.
And it's not a choice.
How does that translate, like, environmentally or like behaviorally? Like, how does that translate for folks? What do they do? How do they move through the world? How do they perceive what happened to them?
I think again, for a lot of people, I can share my own experience, but like what you see, these are, many people who've experienced childhood trauma are also the people who come into your office and are the intellectualizers, the
Mhm.
ruminators. They are the ones who have incredible ability to self-analyze. They've thought
Mm.
through themselves in every single way, shape, or form, but they have yet to be like, oh, maybe I just am. Maybe like maybe it doesn't matter. One of the things when I recover my memories in a particular, there was a moment where I was having a panic attack, and when I have this surge of terror, which is really like me reconnecting and discharging the emotion from things that have happened to me, right? And my hands will do, they'll freeze up. I will actually freeze, right? But one of the things that really helped me in that moment, which I'd never done before, was I was like, just stay here. Prior to that, I always be like, I think I'm having a heart attack. There's something in my body that I don't know what's going on, which again is thematically very interesting when it comes to sort of the idea of childhood experience. But right, what you see with people is again, they're living, breathing human beings. So they will be often kind of very, very functional, very capable, workaholics. They can do a lot of stuff. They can, right? Or
Mm.
depressed or this, but they're thinking all the time. And then what you typically see are these kind of surges of feeling because people are not meant to stay in freeze forever.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's not, it doesn't behoove us to not know what happened to us for our survival. but they won't understand where it's coming from. And again, it's like you see this in therapy a lot where people be like, well, you know, I'm just feeling really bad. And you're like, okay, did something happen? They're like, no, not recently. You're like, okay, in the past year, 2 years. Oh, yeah, 2 years ago, I went through a bad breakup, but that's so long ago. And it's like, well, but that's a trauma. That's a betrayal trauma. It's often common to dissociate. You may be literally processing the emotions now that
Mhm.
you've established enough safety to do so. And that's
Mhm.
normal. I don't know if that answered the question. That was sometimes I can really pontificate, This is,
Mhm.
it's just such a
I think it's helpful to understand like how it manifests, right? That freeze. What does that look like? Functional freeze and intellectualizing and yeah, if you don't know about the memories especially, then what are you to do? You're going to analyze everything else. Like you must be searching for reasons and trying to understand and you have a programming, you have a recording, and the memories aren't accessible yet. I bet when you listen to this podcast, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I wish I could call Rythea Lee. Because that's why I reached out to her in the first place. I was a fan of Rythea's. I watched her TikToks. I wrote her. I said, look, we're going to need to collaborate because I love you and I'm in love with you. And I bet if you're listening to this, you're like, I want Rythea's guidance. I want to directly talk to Rythea too. Well, you can and you should because Rythea actually offers 30-minute support sessions with people who need input on stuck places in their parenting. And I can tell you as her friend, I use her all the time via voice notes. And I want you to know that so can you. You just need to go to the link in our show notes to book a mentoring session with Rythea. She offers 30-minute sessions for parents, and she also has a weekly session open at a reduced rate for low-income and BIPOC individuals. So if you could use some of Rythea's clear, confident, loving, connected, supportive, and brilliant advice, then you need to head over to calendly.com/Rythea or Rythea.com. And those links will be in the show notes. So I wonder also if we could talk a little bit about like you were mentioning at the beginning, how profound this sort of a trauma is, especially in childhood, because it does alter the brain. It alters the entire experience of, and the rest of the lifespan as well, right?
yeah. I mean, I think, sometimes I get a little flack for this, but I think, well, this is what I believe, right? And what I understand the literature says, which is, complex trauma is neurodiversity. So we let, ADHD, right? Autism and ADHD, right? But the reality is that, like, the concept of a normal brain, when we're considering something like neuroplasticity, which is obviously real, is if the brain of any animal is going to be growing to survive their environment, right? It like that doesn't mean there are not genetic bases. They're not right. That's not right. But the idea that a brain does not adapt to environment makes no sense to me, right? So one thing though, I tend to be very so like I make this joke about myself a lot, right? Like I am the person, my brain is great at like, you know, big problems. I am the person you want in the hospital room with you. I am the person you want at right? I can figure out a lot of things. I am not the person you want to go on vacation with,
Mm.
Why
right?
not?
I'm trying to get better at this.
You seem fun. I want to go on vacation with you.
Yeah, but it's not very relaxing,
I
like
know.
it's not, there's not a lot of like, yeah, let's just, like my brain is like, we're looking for things. We're all, it's got a
Mm-hmm.
real hunter gatherer kind of, and I think that comes from, and I have ADHD, and it comes from, again, whether like what causes that, what is it, but like trauma changes the brain. It teaches us about what the world looks like, how this functions, what people are, what is safe, what is not safe. And this particular kind of trauma is really, really complicated because, one, if it's happening to you as a little bitty kid, you miss out on this developmental necessity in uh, growing up, which is reality testing. right? So this entire formidable piece about who you are and what's happening to you and what hurts and what doesn't, right, is not reflected.
Mm.
And so when I think of like symptoms of childhood sexual abuse, people who really question their reality, right, that stems from this very powerful experience where they're being told, something is good or happening or is that is absolutely untrue. Their reality is completely invalidated. The other thing that's incredibly complicated about something like childhood sexual abuse is we live in human bodies that respond to touch. So unlike something, right, unlike trauma that just hurts, right? This particular kind of trauma is far more complicated. And, you know, literal, like good things, right? Good things like pleasure and love and care and attachment are weaponized to force a child to betray themselves, right? It literally becomes something where you don't even understand that you could have agency in your own pleasure and joy and right. So these are incredibly powerful
Mm.
learning experiences. And even just, I often use the term body violations because, again, the childhood sexual abuse is specific as a particular kind of harm, but there's a lot of people who've had surgeries, like gynecologic surgeries or urinary surgeries that have similar in childhood that have similar symptoms. The space where it becomes difficult for a person, a child, to understand is like if it's for a surgery, there's a purpose in there theoretically for good for you,
Mhm.
for
Yeah.
right. If this is about somebody else,
Mhm.
their pleasures, their wants, their desires, like that experience, it doesn't even involve you. You're not even a human being. You
Mhm.
suddenly learn, right, that like it doesn't matter if it's for good for you or bad. There's no meaning in you. You have no meaning in your own life. These are powerful educational lessons. And I'm not going to put I don't put bows on things, but one of the reasons that I started this platform was because, I certainly know in my own experience that being sexually abused made me feel, unlovable. It made me feel disgusting. It made me feel alone, that I was never worthy, that I was, never wanted. I mean, all of these things, right? And as I was coming into awareness and doing this research, looking at kind of the animal world, and I was like, but wait a minute, animals that survive difficult circumstances, we go, oh, that's survival of the fittest. That's adaptation. You would never look at, an old lion who survived all of these different things and be like, that's a broken one. You'd be like, that one's really great. And this narrative about, so like it actually helps me to realize that that narrative about my unlovableness, my brokenness, that actually isn't mine. That's the people who did this to me. It's not
Mm.
mine. I am actually, what survived and am sitting here talking to you. And, you know,
Mm.
Can I share some things based on what you're saying? I'm having so many different thoughts. But so I've been like I would say I've been, like a workaholic of on many, 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 many levels my whole life. But I've spent like the last, I don't know, 5 or 10 years slowly dismantling those patterns and slowing everything down. It's taken a huge amount of effort. And the more I slow down, the more flashbacks I have, the more memories
mhm.
I have, the more I get in my body. And now I've slowed down to the point where I'm doing like a research project of could I love myself? And what I find is when something happens that is my brain thinks is negative or even slightly scary, or like my daughter's becoming a teenager, so she's pushing me away, and that feels like very dangerous. It could be the smallest thing of her saying, "Get away from me," whatever, something like that. And my brain, my body, and my parts just attack me. I'm incapable of loving myself. I feel like I'm incapable of loving myself. I mean, I'm trying to just witness what my nervous system does, what my parts do, what happens emotionally, and just witness it because I feel like I can't stop it, but I can witness it. But I do not feel able to love myself yet physiologically.
May I'm not going to therapize you, but I'm just going to respond in a way because this is I so identify, so, right, completely understand. I think this is incredibly normal. And I think one of the things that survivors of childhood sexual abuse and really childhood trauma don't learn is that love is not a feeling, love is an action. So, one of the things that was incredibly, I always joke that my children are the greatest teachers in the entire world. They really are. They lead the way. They truly are. And one of the things that I think about a lot is like, how do I create a secure attachment? How do I show up, right? Which is love. A secure attachment is love. It is protective. It is,
Mm.
and it has nothing to do with how I feel.
Mm,
It has to do with believing them,
mm.
seeing them, and taking an action towards them, right? So whether or not I want to get up and get them a glass of water, and I just feel full of, I'm tired, I don't want to do this. Why get it, right? If I get up and get them a glass of water, I am practicing love. And what we lose because we didn't have people take loving action, we didn't understand, right? It was all about the feeling. Perpetrators talk about feeling, right? Like, people are identifying your feeling. If you're expressing trauma, oh, look at all that feeling coming out of that person. They don't understand that, feeling is irrelevant in a certain way. Like, we relationally connect by what actions we take. In the world, we are, you know, what we do to one another and for one
Mhm.
another. And
Mhm.
feelings are conceptual. You're not showing them to anybody unless you're taking an action in alignment with the feeling. So the question of loving oneself, where I make jokes all the time, I'm like, I don't, I can't imagine a world where I am not just chock full of shame. I just can't imagine it. But now I operate with like shame as my buddy. It's my co-pilot. It hangs out with me. Right.
Mhm.
And instead of, taking action from shame, I try to take action from being like, well, I'm a person. I'm just a person. Not good, not bad, I'm human. And
Mhm.
human people are allowed, the dignity of being treated like a human being. And that is loving. That is a loving act. My feeling is like, a lot of the feelings don't matter. If you treat yourself with dignity, you are engaging in the practice of loving yourself. And I hate CBT, but like the feelings will follow.
Mhm.
Theoretically, if we
Mhm.
change the behavior, we can start to actually understand what love is.
I was gonna say our kids too, right? By showing up in that way, like you said, I don't want to get the glass of water, but I'm gonna do it. And we just never shut up about that sort of thing on our show because it's all about like, centering our relationship with our kids and showing up for them, even
Hmm.
when we're triggered. And so, I just love what you're saying
Mm.
in the sense that it is also externalized. Then you show up okay with that compassion, you muster up whatever you have to do to make your shame a buddy, or at least like create a relationship with it so that it's comfortable and you don't have to always hide away from it, and do whatever painful thing to yourself and also to your kids to rid yourself of that feeling, that you're there, it's there, and you respond to your child with an attunement to your child, not for yourself. Like, I think that's, you nailed it with that. I just wanted to sort of like tie that, up.
Human beings create harm, right? So like let's just be clear. But what really helped me, there were two things from 12 step that really helped me, which was the idea of being like, what is the next right action?
Mm.
The next right action when your child asks you for water and they are not able to get it themselves is to get them water. That's not debatable. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to wonder about it. I can just know that is the next right action. And that assisted me in being able to move out of feeling. right? Into practice, into the body. And
Mm.
there's another saying, which is if you would like to have self esteem, you must do esteemable things. And interestingly enough, these two things go together, right? Which that taking the next right action based in reality creates a greater sense of self esteem. And it's not confusing. You're not sort of like, did I do the right thing? Did I not do the right thing?
I find what you're saying a little confusing because I know so many caretakers in the world, especially people raised female, but all people who take care of people. If you watch their lives, they look like the most loving people ever, and if you talk to them, they're miserable. They don't take care of themselves. But then there's me. I do all the self-care, and I'm an artist, and I mean, my life looks very loving. That doesn't mean I love myself.
Hmm.
But you're saying like if you do loving action and you do things that are esteemable, you will feel that. The feelings will follow. But I feel that the way that I do feel broken is that I do all that and I still am like self-attacking, which is
Mm. The feelings are still there.
yeah.
I think that's normal too, because I think part of this, though, is kind of like instead of addressing the feeling, right, is addressing reality. So, what does this mean? What the heck am I saying, right? So, when I recovered my memories, I was the mother of two small children. And I do think part of the reason I recovered my memories was because I was the mother of two small children who were in danger. And whether or not I could cognitively understand that, my body was responding to this, right? Because the people
Mm,
who'd hurt me were still in my life, in my orbit,
mm,
right? And you know, it behooved me to know
Mm.
what had happened to me so
Mm.
that I could
um,
protect right? Again,
Wow.
I think
mm.
this was, and it's reflected in the literature as being pretty normal.
Oh.
But one of the things that, and again, when I say normal, like there's a real range of normal. So that's not, but that's part of, I think, when people kind of come into awareness around parenthood, it's like you're meant to do something with this. But one of the things that was really fascinating in this space, right, was like the challenge of feeling. So I love the people who hurt me, right? I can say that without, and again, I'm not saying love in some kind of flowery, like, I'm talking about like human attachment.
Mm,
I am deeply connected
mm,
to them and
Mm.
have feeling to them. It has lessened the
Mm.
more I've come into my own self. And, it also just is like the issue around what to do was a hard one because here I was with all of this feeling. And self care would be like, honor that feeling. Also honor this, right? How do you care for a multitude of conflicting feelings?
right.
And if I tried to take care of myself in that moment, I honestly think I would have lost my mind.
Mm.
But I could be like, okay, taking care of this reality is about doing the next right thing to protect my kids. In reality, I'm the big, strong person who can do things they can't. And they're telling me this is and I need to do something, right? So it's hard because I think sometimes, we are in a way told to orient to our feelings. And I found in my own healing that not orienting to my feelings and orienting to actions that I feel proud of and are connected to something purposeful and meaningful in my life helps. Right. And I don't think it's broke. Like, again, I say to people, I say to you, there's nothing that's going to make any of this better. This shit is never going to be better.
Yeah.
I'm not going to fucking heal from what I
Mhm.
Right.
lived through. That's not a thing. This
Yeah.
is my life. It's my real
Mm,
life.
mm,
Now, what am I going to do with it?
Right. Which there's something like maybe, reminiscent, not that it's the same thing, but it's kind of reminiscent of those like old toxic positivity books that are like only control what you can control and like all of that language, like the spiritual bypassing type stuff. But you're not saying that. You're saying that when we spend time focusing on the deep pain that we're in, the recording, and we are trying to heal from that, that something is maybe missing, like that like if we can refocus onto what we can do in reality.
So my understanding is that if we are animals, which I think we are, all animals have feeling because it's supposed to initiate an action.
Oh,
Hmm.
I see. I see.
Like that it's functional.
That just clicked for me.
Right.
Our feelings are there for a reason, right? They're
Right.
there for a
You
reason.
got to do something, right, with them.
But see, but that's the thing though, because a lot of times people are trying to fix their childhood problems with their present day. See, that's what makes people addicts and workaholics and caretakers is they're trying to resolve the hurt through their present day action. So that's why what you're saying is a little confusion because you can't confusing because you
Mm.
can't act your way out of
The
feeling what happened
pain.
to you.
Right.
Yeah,
The
No,
the
pain.
pain. Right.
but so this is where, as a deep, again, I went to Al-Anon because my drug of choice was control, right? Like this was that was it, control.
Mm,
So whether it's workaholism, whether it's, any substance use, whether it's sex, what doesn't matter what it is, shopping. The purpose of all of those behaviors is to make the feeling go away.
right.
It's not to be like, how do I make this feeling that is inside my body come out of my body? Quite literally, when I say you have to do something, like, I make this joke to my therapist all the time where I'm like, I'm just not going to talk about the trauma because it's not going to help me, but I'll thrash dance around after this. And she's like, that's great. Do it to it. Right. Because like part of it is like, intellectually processing it's too slow. Like the level of intensity of feeling needs to be brought out in alignment with that. And that's why it has to be expressed. And it's so weird because, all of us hate doing it. Every single person is like, I'm so angry. I'm worried if I get angry, I'll never stop being angry. I'm worried if I'll start crying, I'll never stop being crying. I'm worried if I have a panic attack, I'll never stop having a panic attack. Turns out, interestingly enough, every time, you know, you stop. You just every time, but you just got to get it out.
Yeah.
And that's actually like how one becomes more embodied. So the next right action when it comes to releasing anger as a parent of two small children, right, is not releasing anger at them.
Yeah.
Right. I see what you're saying. So what so it's expressing your anger in some kind of constructive healing way. That's a loving action. So you're not talking about not feeling.
Oh, hell no. Oh, no, hell no.
It's sort of
Okay.
like you're sort of saying,
You got to use it. Like, you
Oh.
got
but
to use it.
acknowledgement too. I think there's also like in this whole conversation, like people just don't want to feel it, right? We're trying to avoid the feeling. So we're going to scroll and yeah, or we're going to intellectualize it, right? And we're going to, maybe we'll bring it to our therapist and talk about it, but we're not really feeling it.
Right.
So then, you're talking about self-attack, Rythea, like helplessness, like blame, right? Self-hatred.
Mm,
It's sort of like, okay, acknowledging that all of that is there and that it may not go away, but then running with the program as the program dictates to be like pulling on, your kid maybe to get that affirmation, I'm still lovable,
right.
right? Would not be
Right.
the next right action. I
Right.
guess that's how I'm conceptualizing that.
Yeah.
And my daughter is like, well, as soon as I do the wrong loving action, she's like, slap,
Right.
slap, slap.
Yeah, they'll tell you. That didn't work. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah. Which is why our kids are our spiritual teachers. It
Yeah.
all really
Yeah.
it's all they're pointing us to the way of the next right action. They're going to pull us there and be like, what the fuck is
So
wrong
true.
with you? Don't blame me for your shit.
Yeah.
And you're like, shit, you're right. I shouldn't blame you. I also shouldn't blame myself. Duh.
They also know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm,
my 4-year-old like knows how to move through feeling, to
Mm-hmm.
release
mm,
feeling, to
mm.
right process, like knows it is an instinctual, right? The body
Right.
knows, and
Yeah.
I don't. So I'm
Right.
eternally being like, oh, that was such an interesting idea. We should dance to Who Let the Dogs Out. Right? Like, what a great idea. I'm on edge. Let's dance to Who Let the Dogs Out. And time after time, right? It works. It is quite literally the thing that works. And I think one thing I would say, is like when you're sitting there in that narrative of like, with that tape rolling, I'm in love, I'm bad, and blah, 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 you're likely not doing anything that expresses the feeling. And that's how you know it's freeze.
Mm.
Oh,
Do you know what
okay.
I
Thank
mean?
you. Thank you. That's
Like
really
if
helpful.
I'm driving in I'm in the grocery store and in my head, it's like I'm just such a piece of shit. And,
Mm.
you just mess up everything. And I'm like picking out apples. Like we are disconnected from reality. Whatever's right, like what's happening inside of me as a real human being is not being responded to and brought into the world in a so like that the work is to be like if
Mm,
I feel that bad,
yeah.
then I just need to tend to it. I'm supposed to respond to it. I'm supposed to do
Mm.
something. It doesn't even have to be big. It can just be like putting your hand on your chest and
Yeah.
tapping and being like,
Right.
bro, you're right here. You're in the
Yeah.
grocery store. Come on.
Mhm.
Can we just breathe for a second? Because there's a direction I wanted to go in, and I just don't remember what it was. Oh, I would love to talk about what it's like to recover memory.
Mm.
I think people don't really get to hear about that very much. Do you know and love the book Repressed Memories by Renee Fredrickson?
No,
Abby? You don't know that book?
no.
Oh my
Mm-mm.
God, it's the most amazing book. It's basically talks about all the different kinds of way to recover memory.
Mm.
One example is reenactment. We reenact our traumas so that we can see them, feel them, and we purposely want to re-experience them so we can remember. So we reenact our traumas so because we're trying to remember. That's one
Yes.
way that
Yes.
memory is becoming unrepressed, is trying to be unrepressed,
Yes.
which is also why when we have children, we remember a lot of times because we want to reenact things and then we go, wait a minute, what's that about? And then memory
Mm.
comes up.
Right.
Um,
Why
and
did
she,
I say that?
yeah,
Why, right?
exactly.
It's and again, that doesn't have to be about profound trauma. That can just be like your own childhood and being like, why
Yes.
did I suddenly and how did I turn into my mother? Right? Like that's normal. That's memory at work.
Yes. And
Yeah.
Mhm.
why when my kid said that, did I want to hit my kid? When I know I'll
Mhm.
never hit my kid, but I really want to hit my kid when they whine or whatever, that kind of
Mm.
thing.
Because I
So,
was hit. Because I was hit. Yeah.
right. And that's memory coming up.
That is memory. Yes.
And she talks about repressed memory can come up in dreams. That's how I recovered a lot of my first like 10 years of remembering. And my therapist would always say, what part of this feels like the memory? What part of it feels like the feelings of the memory? And I always knew. I'd be like, well, I think this actually happened. And I think this is just a metaphor for how it felt. And then a lot of times for me, like the way I recovered memory was um, I did left and right-handed writing, so my left hand,
Mm-hmm.
my non-dominant hand would write the memories, which were illegible,
Mm-hmm.
but they would write things out and it would be completely insane. I would read the thing like this person did this to you and they touched your body in this way and blah blah blah. I would feel absolutely nothing. I would just be like,
Yep.
why did I write that? That was the dumbest thing. That's so stupid. And then within like a week or two, the feelings would start. And then I would have emotional memory come up. I would start sobbing and crying. And then when I would cry hysterically, I would have visual snapshots and images. Then I had a lot of physical, and I still have this. When I'm starting to have a memory come up, my vagina will hurt so much. And this happens to me regularly. I'm like, oh, a memory's coming up. My vagina hurts. It feels like someone's stabbing my vagina. Okay. Memories coming up. Then I spend weeks. I mean, this has gotten shorter and shorter, but in the beginning, it's weeks to months trying very, very hard not to remember and doing every
Mm-hmm.
addiction I could think of, hating myself more than I could ever imagine, and just trying to resist it. And then eventually I would say, fuck it. I just got to see what I'm remembering. And then I have these friends and therapists and partners who would say, go ahead, tell me it. And I would just say, okay, this is what I think happened. And I would just say, this is what I think happened. And then I would like all it would unfold. And then I would have a lot of feelings about the memories and all kinds of integration. And then all the physical pain would stop and all the self-hatred would stop and all the addictions would stop. And then we would start the cycle again. But
Mm.
now I know when it's happening. So I'll start really, really hating myself and wanting to numb out. And I'll be like, oh, memories coming up. And now I know, don't resist it. Just go into it because you save yourself months and months of time.
Mm.
Yep. No, that's, I mean, again, what your experience is one that I certainly have heard. And again, it's exclusively yours, but the somatic, the kind of the way it, right, that there's a cycle to it, a rhythm, that there's like physiological sensations, that what you recover in one way, it's still dissociated. There's no feeling connected to it. Then those feelings kind of start to bloom and come. Yeah, there's no right way or wrong way to remember, first of all. And I do find that everybody's experience, is different. But like you said, the things that you are saying, right, the spaces, the body, the mind, the emotions, dreams, the somatic stuff is pretty, standard
Mm.
when it comes to processing memory
Mhm.
and remembering. And again, I think one of the things that's really hard that I find for a lot of experiences of survivors is when they're in this process, they go to people for help, therapists, doctors, right? These people are not educated in
Right.
what's happening. They don't understand. And then they diagnose them with an anxiety disorder,
Yes.
some physiological, typically something that, is not good, right? A chronic illness, this, an autoimmune thing, which again doesn't mean it's not that, but
Right.
the labeling is often very much like, and now you're stuck with this forever. That narrative doesn't help people who really don't, because the truth is, I think you just said it, and I'll say this, it gets way better. Like it's not that what happened to you will ever get better, but as the steward of it, now in adulthood, I have so much power in it to try to use for good, and that makes a big difference. But that process, right? Like again, because it's not sort of talked about as being real, people don't know what's happening when people come to them for help. Don't understand. And again, you never diagnose people with recovering memories, right? But like you can support people in this process of helping them to find safety in this experience of recovering memories where they are completely, fully without safety. They're really just, and it feels terribly unsafe to be diagnosed with a persistent mental illness or a persistent chronic illness. But I talk about how, like, when the body is releasing trauma, this is normal.
Yeah.
Mm.
Whatever it is, this is normal.
Yeah.
And it is. It is. Yeah, my therapist, the thing that really helped me was when I had this huge panic attack in front of her. It was on Zoom. It was a one-off that she got to see this, because nobody ever did. And I was freezing up and she goes, Abby, that's not a panic attack. That's terror.
Mm.
That's all it took
Mm.
to be like, yeah. And it comes from somewhere, right?
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
that's all it
Right.
took.
There's something so validating.
Are you still having memories? Like, are you still recovering memory?
Oh yeah, I'm sure I will be for the rest of my life.
Yeah, me too. I
But
know.
that's okay. There's no right way to process it or to be with it or to know it or to, right? Um, but yeah, I mean, it's like anything. We're going to be learning ourselves for the rest of our lives. That's,
Well,
Mm.
it's very also normal to really just want to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
just want it. I mean, when someone says, "Well, how can I help you?" I'll say, "Well, just make it not have happened." That would be the
Mhm.
best gift you could give me, and that's the one thing
that's the
nobody could
wish.
give me. Yeah.
Mhm.
Nobody wants this to have happened to them. That's this argument about, like, nobody wants this. It is a heartbreak, and it puts a child in an excruciatingly heartbreaking position where they have to choose their humanity or the humanity of everybody they love and depend on. And that is too much. So nobody, that, yeah, I don't want it to be true. I want to make it go away. Make it go away. Make it not true.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a good wish. Doesn't mean it can happen, but it's a good, healthy, loving wish,
When you say that's normal, because that's something you say a lot, I think you mean that's healthy or something.
Yeah, I think, why do I say it's normal? Because I think one of the things that this idea of normal is so funny to me that we don't take into, like, that's a normal response to this.
Right.
That is appropriate to context.
Right.
I see.
That
Right.
is appropriate to, right? That's normal. Like Lois barking at a dog out there is normal. Lois just barking with no understanding of what, right? We'd be like, it's not normal. No, you have to honor what the response is to understand its normalcy. And so that's why I think it's so important, especially because all of us who have had this experience knew on some level, like it might have been our family or might have been our lives, but we felt the abnormalness of it and internalized that. So it's deeply important to be like, no, that is what we expect
Right.
people to
Right.
have had this experience to move through or feel or think. Like, again, it's not pathological, it's normal.
Right. Right.
So this is why your channel is called People Make Sense. It's really amazing to find someone and love someone that doesn't know you, because I run into people and they're like, "Oh my God, you're like my best friend." And I'm like, "I get it. I feel that way. I get that."
I'm so honored. No, I mean, I'm delighted to be found. If truly, I feel the same way. And I really think, I just thought I was shouting into the void but it's
Yeah.
incredible what it can do. So I'm Abby at People Make Sense on TikTok, the same thing on Instagram. And then you can go to my website, which is www.peoplemakesense.org. You can email me if you need to. I typically don't respond to any clinical questions or anything like that, but if I can ethically respond to people, I do.
Like, is your practice just full? Because like mine's always full. So are you full? Like, are you taking on people?
My focus in this moment in time is parenting the small people I'm deeply attached to, right? So I closed my books at this time, have not transitioned to taking people who I meet through social media, because I feel like, given the nature of what I talk about and the power dynamics involved, I just want to make sure that I do everything in a way that feels safe and ethical.
So I was thinking, if you came on again, I would love to talk about what it's like to be a survivor of CSA and be a parent. I thought that might be a really great next thing to talk about. What comes up for us
Totally.
as parents,
Mm.
and what makes it particularly difficult for us based on our history.
And I would love to know about the practical side of things, like talking about consent, boundaries, limits, how you navigate unsafe feelings as a parent, like sleepovers, all those questions around how you look at your own past and you try to take a balanced view of what's really happening, right? And do the best right action for your kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And parents who are estranged from their extended families, that happens a lot, and that's a whole topic also. So
Yeah.
maybe we could get into some of those things.
I would love to.
Abby, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was really fun.
This was really fun. This has been Your Kids Don't Suck. You can find me, Cara Tedstone, at www.caratedstonetherapy.com and on Instagram at Cara Tedstone Therapy. On my website, you'll find links to recommended readings and a link to my Reparenting with Mindfulness workbook, available now on Amazon.
You can find me, Rythea Lee, at www.rythea.com. That's RYTHEA.com. There you'll find published books, articles, and music, and parenting videos. Also, I'm on TikTok at Rythea Lee, on Instagram at Rythea Lee. You can book parent mentoring sessions with me through my website. And also I have an Advice from a Loving Bitch YouTube show that helps people heal self-hatred, and that's rythea.com/advice. It is important and essential to put our voices, Rythea and Cara, in a context. We are two white, cisgendered, straight, middle-class women living with financial and societal privilege. Because of this, our perspectives are limited and do not reflect the realities of all of our listeners. This podcast will feature guests with expertise around conscious parenting who differ in race, class, abilities, sexual orientation, and histories from us, to broaden the conversation and reflect the lives of as many people as possible. 25% of the proceeds of this podcast will go to creators of color who have been mentors and influences on our work and in our growth as parents.
If you like our show, please subscribe and stay tuned for more conscious parenting advice and insights. And check out our link tree at linktr.ee/yourkidsdon'tsuck to donate and connect with us.
Kids don't suck anything that's sweet.